All right. So, this lesson, okay, we are talking about some of the main things, some big things that happened during Washington's presidency. Okay, so during the time when Washington was president, we're talking about some major events and things that happened, some challenges and decisions that the government had to make. Okay, so during this time, okay, in Europe, okay, Britain and France were having some tension. We're having some conflict with one another. Okay, and it really kind of stemmed from when the French rebelled against their king. So actually, France, they used the American Revolution as an inspiration to have their own revolution. And the storming of the Bastille is a hatred fortress and prison. It was one of the first acts of the French Revolution. So, what was happening in France was the king and queen of France, King Louis and Marie Antoinette, they were living their lives like normal kings and queens. Well, while the rest of France was going broke, a lot of people were starving and dying, and so the French people rebelled. Right, they used the American Revolution as inspiration and rebelled against their king and queen. And some Americans were like, yes, go France, you're doing what we just did. Like, get rid of the monarchy, right? So some Americans were all for and in support of the French and their revolution, but some Americans were like, they're taking taking this revolution a little violently, because actually the people of France during the French Revolution ended up beheading their king and queen through a guillotine. Sorry, a little violent description there. Okay, but it turned violent. Okay, that's the whole point. It turned violent. So some Americans were seeing that is not a revolution. They're taking this a lot further than we did, right? And so some did not think that the Americans should support and help the French. So, right, even a few years during the French Revolution, France and Britain went to war with each other, actually, now. So not only is France having a revolution of their own, but they're now at war with Britain again. Okay? And so some Americans, they wanted to support France, while others wanted to support Britain, and then there was a group that even wanted to remain neutral. What does it mean? What does it mean to remain neutral? Yeah, they're not fighting. They're like in the middle. They're like, we're not picking sides, right? We're not picking sides. Who do you think out of Hamilton and Jefferson supported France? Jefferson. Remember, Jefferson was the big diplomat to France? Remember, he was the one who pretty much got France to ally with us during the war. Okay, Hamilton was against going to war because, I mean, a lot of Americans were thinking, should America get involved with a conflict that is happening in Europe between two countries that doesn't involve them? Right? It's all stemming from this question: is should America, should the United States get involved with a conflict with foreign countries? That's kind of the whole question here. What should they do? If two countries, like in Europe, or two countries elsewhere having conflicts, should America get involved when it doesn't involve them, right? And so there's that question. So here we are with this neutrality proclamation. Okay, so it was the debate over whether they should support or not support, right, France, or who they should support, or Britain, or whatever, separated Congress and Washington's cabinet, right? We start even seeing this more. Jefferson wanted to support France, while Hamilton wanted to support Britain. And so President George Washington, he presented his opinion to Congress in the form of a neutrality proclamation, which stated that the U.S. would not take sides in any European countries that were at war. He felt that this was going to be the best for America in the long run if they didn't make a tie with a certain European country, right? They didn't want to ally because he only thought that would cause more conflict for the United States. And some Congress even disagreed with Washington's decision. One, they either thought that we should side with France or Britain, but then two, they also did not care that Washington was giving his opinion and making this statement because they thought that he was taking advantage of his power. Right? So some Americans are, angered that they were choosing to stay neutral and not get involved, right? Because a lot of people who supported France were like, hey, they just helped us, right, win the American Revolution. Why shouldn't we go help them? And then some were saying, well, they have more ties with Britain. They have more trading and that stuff with Britain, so we should help them, and so forth. So it's definitely some conflict over what they should do, what should the United States do with this conflict. All right, we go in this. You good, Michael? Okay. Another thing that happened is Jay's Treaty. So during this time that France and Britain were at war, right, and the Americans already said they're remaining neutral, right? They're not picking sides. Well, in the late 1793, some British ships actually seized or took American ships that was carrying food to France. So that caused some big drama, right? Because with the United States saying they're being neutral, but then the British taking American ships, right? The United States, we're like, what the heck? Come on, we're staying neutral. Why are you taking our ships here? And so Washington sent John Jay to settle and make a compromise with Britain, okay, which became known as Jay's Treaty. I mean, makes sense. It's named after him. Remember I told you how creative they are with their names? Okay, so in Jay's Treaty, two main things came part of this treaty. The first is that Britain would pay damages for the seized ships that they took. Okay, so the British is gonna pay for the damages that they took. Okay, and then they were also to abandon their forts because they had forts in the northwestern frontier. You get on it. Okay. So because the British still had forts in the northwestern frontier, and so the British were going to pay for the damages they did, and then they were going to leave those forts on American soil. Second part of Jay's Treaty is that America agreed to pay its debts owed to Britain. So remember, they owed a bunch of money, they had a bunch of debt. Okay, they are agreeing to pay the debt that they owed to Britain. Many objected to this treaty because they felt it did not punish Britain enough, especially since the United States said that they are remaining neutral, and the British kind of broke that, right, pact or agreement, and so many felt that it didn't punish the British enough, especially people in the South, where they felt that Britain should have paid for the enslaved people that they had set free during the war. All right, we good? All right, moving on. All right, Pinckney Treaty. So in 1784, okay, so taking a little back here, Spain had closed the port of New Orleans to the United States. So if you remember, the port of New Orleans was a huge port because it's connected to the Mississippi River, and they used the Mississippi River, right, to transport goods down the river and it goes out through the port of New Orleans. Then it can be shipped off to other places. Well, Spain closed that port for the United States, so they couldn't use that to then ship out their goods. And so Thomas Pinckney went to negotiate a treaty with Spain, and Spain tried to delay that to try to get more, the treaty more in their favor. However, it was eventually signed in 1785. Okay, so two things came out of this treaty is that the United States or Spain recognized that the United States southern border was at 31° north latitude. Okay, so they recognized kind of their southern border, because remember Spain at this time was still in control of Mexico and Florida. And then the second thing was that Spain reopened the port of New Orleans so that U.S. ships can go and ship out their goods. We good? Okay, just a few more minutes. A few seconds for me. All right, moving on. If I need to go back to that slide, I will, okay? All right, so if you remember back on Monday when we listened to the Hamilton song, Cabinet Battle 1, remember when Jefferson said the line, "Imagine what we're going to do when they tax our whiskey"? So it was actually a foreshadowing of this event called the Whiskey Rebellion. And so if you remember part of Hamilton's economic plan, okay, right, they were going to raise taxes, and so one of the taxes they raised was on whiskey in March 1791, and so many states were angry about this, especially farmers. Farmers believed this was a tax aimed at them. Does anyone know why they think it was aimed at them? Has anyone heard that Luke Bryan song? I think it's Luke Bryan, where it's like, corn makes whiskey, like rain makes corn, corn makes whiskey. No? Okay. Well, there's a song there. But anyways, corn makes whiskey. And who grows the corn? Farmers, right? And so they are saying that they think this tax on the whiskey then is a target at them, right? Is aimed at them because they're the ones that's going to be hurting from it. And so in 1794, some farmers lashed out and they refused to pay the tax. Some of them even tarred and feathered tax collectors, and then it became known as the Whiskey Rebellion. Washington got upset about this. Washington was mad because it felt like that these farmers or these people who were rebelling in this Whiskey Rebellion were rebelling at the fact that Congress was taxing them, right? And so he personally led an army to crush this rebellion, to show them that Congress does have the right to tax and enforce these taxes, right? And so he went, and this is actually the only time we have seen in our history a president personally leading and stopping a rebellion, personally leading an army and stopping a rebellion. I mean, it makes sense. He was the general, right, of the American Revolution for the Americans. And so pretty much by the time they arrived, most of the rebels had fled, and it was pretty much bottled up at that point. But, right, it really did show, okay, that Congress does have the right to tax, right? And Washington, by him personally leading an army out, it shows that the president is enforcing the laws, enforcing the laws or the tax that Congress had passed, right? Because one of the jobs of the executive branch is to enforce the laws, right? All right, we got one more slide here. If I need to go back, I will. All right, so in 1796, Washington actually decided to not run for a third term, which was very shocking to some. I mean, he was the first president. They didn't never set a term limit. What amendment set the number of terms for a president? Remember, it kind of rhymes. What amendment set the limit to 2 terms? 22nd Amendment, right? 2 terms. Okay. So it wasn't until the 22nd Amendment, the 22nd Amendment wasn't passed until about the late 1940s, 1950s. This is 1796, right? So by him not running for a third term and only serving 2 terms as president, it set that precedent. What does a precedent mean again? Yeah? What? Not when you already served as president, but by him only serving 2 terms, he set that precedent for future generations. What does that mean? What is it? Remember? What's that word precedent mean? He only served 2, it set the precedent for serving only 2 terms as the president. Anyone remember? Okay, so him setting that, it means, right, he set an example that you really only serve 2 terms. Okay, so remember a precedent. Okay, so that word with the C, right? Okay, precedent means an example, or it's an exact action, or to serve as an example for future generations. Okay, and so Hamilton and Madison helped Washington write his farewell address, where he discussed actually some of the greatest dangers he thought for the American public. And the weird thing is, guys, we can see how almost all of these things have come true. Almost all these things that Washington warned that were going to be bad for the country has come true. Look at this, okay? He warned against forming permanent ties with foreign countries, okay? Okay? No, but I mean, look at all the world wars that happened, right? Okay? Or just conflicts could happen, okay? This is the biggest one I know. Disagreements among political groups are going to weaken the country. Disagreements between political parties are going to weaken the country. Is that true? Yes. Look at how much our country is split based on the political parties, right? They're split. Our country is split. And when it's split, don't you think it's going to weaken the country? Yes. He warned against too much public debt. Anyone know how much debt we are in our country? Trillions of dollars. Trillions. Okay? Someone asked in my second period, why are we so in debt? Think about all the wars we've been in since the American Revolution. American Civil War. Well, okay. War of 1812, American Civil War, both world wars, Korean War, Vietnam War, the wars that happened in the early 2000s in the Middle East. Because they owe so much money to other countries for, supplies, and they lend money to other countries, and yeah, there's a website, and I can't remember what it's called, but literally you can see we're just gaining debt every day. Like it's crazy, but right. And then the next one is government should not borrow too much money. We borrowed money, so we owe money to other countries, right? So a lot of these three things, it's just crazy. And we're gonna study more of his farewell address tomorrow, and actually we'll be listening to the Hamilton song that goes along with it. But it's crazy to see these things that he warned were going to be the greatest dangers to the American public have come true, right? I mean, the first president saw these things that are already going to, be dangerous, and they have come true. So it's crazy to see that. But anyways, these are the last bit of our notes, okay, for lesson 3. Go ahead, submit those, okay? And then those are the last notes for this week, and then we'll do lessons 4 and 5 next week. Sure. I'm sorry, which one?